Welcome to another edition of the Voice of Palestine, Voice of the Palestinian People. It's January 17, 2013, and I'm your co-host, Hanna Qawas. Tonight, we'll depart from our interview format and have a special two-part show. First, an eyewitness Palestine about the Palestinian village of Bab al-Shams, and then a discussion by our co-host about the transition of the Voice of Palestine to its new web format. And now we start with Marion. Marion?
Good evening. Our special Eyewitness Palestine tonight is about the Israeli military attack on the new Palestinian village of Bab al-Shams. We have two reports, both from the Electronic Intifada. The first was written by journalist and author Max Blumenthal under the title, "Eviction of Bab al-Shams Exposes Israel as a Lawless State." Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was clearly troubled by the establishment of Bab al-Shams, a Palestinian protest village erected on privately owned Palestinian land, in the planned route of what Israel calls the E1 corridor in the occupied West Bank. The E1 area was to be the capstone of Israel's settler colonial enterprise, a long segment of housing units expanding east from the Jews-only mega-settlement of Mal Adumim, permanently severing East Jerusalem from the rest of the West Bank and virtually slicing the West Bank in half. And now, 400 Palestinians and their supporters stood directly in the way of the plan. "We will not allow anyone to touch the corridor between Jerusalem and Mal Adumim," Netanyahu declared on January 13th. On January 12th, Netanyahu dispatched a lawyer from the Justice Ministry to the Israeli High Court to argue for the immediate eviction of Bab al-Shams. Despite the government's vehement objections to the presence of the Palestinian village, the High Court issued a temporary injunction preventing its eviction for 6 days pending further deliberations. However, as the clock struck midnight last Saturday night, Netanyahu summoned his lawyers to author a statement overriding the High Court. Treating the court's ruling as a mere suggestion, the Israeli Justice Ministry concocted a justification that was as ludicrous as it was predictable. "There is an urgent security need to evacuate the area of the people in tents," it claimed, suggesting without evidence that a few hundred unarmed activists presented a grave threat to public safety. I arrived at the site of Bab al-Shams about 2 hours before Netanyahu ordered its eviction. The main entrances to the tent encampment were sealed off by squads of Israeli police. A police commander told me and other journalists that no reporters were allowed inside the area. Though he claimed to hold a formal order from the military, he failed to produce any kind of documentation. In order to enter Bab al-Shams, 3 colleagues and myself had to first navigate the narrow, potholed, scarred roads of Al-Zaim, an impoverished Palestinian town severed from the rest of the Jerusalem municipality by Israel's separation wall and a checkpoint. Though Al-Zaim is already an overcrowded, underserviced ghetto, prevented from expanding to meet the needs of a growing population, the construction of the E1 corridor would enclose it on all sides, consolidating its isolation and forced misery. In the past year, Palestinian activists began to take their tactics beyond the weekly ritual of village-based protests, organizing creative direct actions like the blocking of settler access roads and a raucous protest in the Rami Levy settlement supermarket. And now Bab el-Shams, which was the evidence of the new era of protest in Palestine, attracting Palestinian activists from even inside Israel and from the northern West Bank cities like Nablus and Jenin. I spoke to Hamdi Abu Rahmi, a videographer from Berlin, about the progression of protest tactics, from the embryonic phase of the popular struggle to the birth of Bab el-Shams. The people here have so much practice with resistance over the years, and that explains our success, Abu Rahmi told me. We have a strong sense of organization and of deciding what we'll want, how best to handle the army, and how to make sure everyone's needs are looked after. With all the roads closed, it wasn't easy to make this village happen. But people still came through the mountains and were willing to stay here for 3 days without enough food, without showers, in the freezing cold. You can see that people really want to be here, that they are not acting because they have to be here. And at the entrance of the village, I found about a dozen residents of the Belin village huddled around a campfire, sipping coffee and smoking cigarettes. Forget about the food, Berlin Popular Committee leader Abdullah joked. If we don't have cigarettes and coffee, we won't survive a night here, he added. However, 2 hours later, some 500 border police troops in full riot gear marched into Bab el-Shams and carried its inhabitants away by force. According to reports from some of the 150 activists inside, the police attacked journalists, pushing them to the periphery of the encampment so they could not record the brutality. Photos of those injured during the raid suggest that the police severely assaulted those who refused to leave quietly. 6 Palestinians, including the artist and activist Hafez Omar, a photograph of the injured Omar is circulating on Facebook. 6 Palestinians were so badly wounded they required treatment at the Ramallah hospital. Under pressure from white right-wing upstarts amidst a heated election contest, Netanyahu ordered the eviction of Bab el-Shams in a flagrant contempt of the country's high court. And not one of the judges issued a word of protest. In a state guided not by the democratic rule of law, but by the colonial imperatives of the occupation, Netanyahu's roguery was business as usual. That was excerpts of a report by Max Blumenthal, a journalist and best-selling author, on the Israeli military attack on Bab el-Shams. And now we have part of a report from one of the participants who was inside Bab el-Shams when the camp was attacked, Abbas Sarsour, also carried on the electronic intifada under the title Making History in Bab el-Shams. Here's part of what he said. We started to build tents. After a few hours, 4 more busloads of activists arrived at the scene. Together we erected even more tents. By noon, after finishing with the tents, we held Friday prayers for the first time in Bab el-Shams. Not long after, we were met by Israeli border police and soldiers who arrived at the location to hand out eviction notices to the residents of this new village. Bab el-Shams, having been founded just hours earlier, had already posed a risk to the Israeli government. The police threatened to return and demolish the tents shortly if we didn't take them down ourselves. Needless to say, we stood our ground. Luckily, we had already been prepared for such an occasion. We petitioned against the threatened demolitions to the Israeli High Court, which then issued a warrant delaying any eviction or demolition for 6 days. The court would use this time to further assess the situation. It is important to remember, though, that Bab el-Shams was erected on private Palestinian land. So there it stood, the village of Bab el-Shams with a Palestinian flag standing tall at the highest point of the village. But the village was quickly put under lockdown. Nothing was going in, nothing went out. We were short on mattresses, blankets, and food. Everybody understood the situation and shared whatever they could with one another. The night was cold and people were freezing in their beds. Thank God for the paramedics who were on site to help us. We were also our own security guards in the village. We had our own security guards in the village who stayed up all night protecting everyone. Bab el-Shams was in fact looking more and more like a village. The second day, a little after noon, some of the activists who were feeling unwell made the decision to return home for treatment and rest. They walked to the nearest streets where Israeli occupation forces quickly escorted them away from Bab el-Shams. But at the same time, another 100 or so activists arrived from another set of buses to bolster our presence. They brought with them supplies and renewed our spirits. As our population grew, so did the imminent threat of an Israeli raid, designed to stop all activity in Bab el-Shams. And at 11 p.m. on Saturday, more than 500 Israeli forces, soldiers and police, surrounded the village. The armed Israeli forces climbed the hillside up to us and completely encircled us. They were ordering us to leave. Many of the activists tied themselves to the tents. Others put their hands together and sat down in the middle of the small village, chanting in Arabic, "With our souls, with our blood, we'll protect Palestine." We were outnumbered. Plus, we could see the soldiers burning various items in the village. Soon enough, the Israeli forces began their assault on us specifically. Everyone in the village was rounded up and arrested. Many were hit with the butts of Israeli weapons. Others, including myself, were dragged through the sand and dirt and thrown back onto buses. The buses started their engines about an hour after they were filled. We didn't know where we were going, but we assumed to an Israeli prison. But we later found out that Israeli Hummers were escorting the buses to the Kalandia checkpoint, where we were greeted by other Palestinians and activists in high spirits. We had made history with Bab el-Shams, and we continue to refuse to let Israeli government construct settlements on Palestinian land. That was highlights of a report carried in the Electronic Intifada by Abbas Sarsour, a 21-year-old Palestinian from Ramallah. We'll now go for a music break.
جيد النار بعرس النار جيد النار بعرس النار وعلى عرش الحرية تربع جبل الخوف انهد وصار جبل الخوف انهد وصار من فور بركان ومقلع خلي اللي ما شاف يشوف وخلي اللي ما سمع يسمع الحجار بوجه البارود والبركان بوجه المدفع جيد النار بعرس النار وعلى عرش الحرية تربع كرمالك وهبته عايش ناطن سومك وهبته اي والله الموت ما خفته وهبته لاجلك يا حنون الموت طايله يابا 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 يا طالع عجبال النار هاتلي منها شي وردة راجع لك يا أرض الدار شدة وبتزول الشدة يا طالع عجبال النار هاتلي منها شي وردة راجع لك يا أرض الدار وشدة وبتزول الشدة يا طالع عالدار النار هاتي منها شي وردة راجع لك يا أرض الدار شدة وبتزول الشدة راجع بيدي رصاص وفي الله يا طالع عالدار النار هاتي منها شي وردة راجع لك يا أرض الدار شدة بتزول الشدة أيوة ساكت عن حقه شيطان يحسون الأوطان يا طالع عجبال النار هاتلي منها شي وردة راجع لك يا أرض الدار وشدة وبتزول الشدة.
And we were listening to Palestinian folk singers, Al-Ashiqeen. And this beautiful song is called To Those Who Are Climbing the Mountain of Fire, Bring Me From It a Flower, and our hardship will soon vanish. We dedicate this song to the Palestinian people, and we hope that they will overcome the hardship of Israeli ethnic cleansing, war crimes, and apartheid. And now we go back to Marion. Marion?
Yes, we'll now carry on with the second part of our show, which is a discussion by our two co-hosts, Hannah and myself, about the transition of Voice of Palestine to its new web-based format. It's now been almost 3 months. Actually, we started the new web format on October 24th, so it's almost 3 months that we've been broadcasting in this new format and experimenting and exploring this format. So we wanted to update listeners on how things are going, thank all the people that have supported the show, also talk a little bit more about why we left Co-op Radio, some of our personal feelings about it, and then just a bit of a wrap-up with our experiences in these first 3 months. So I'll kick it off to you, Hannah, to start off with. Listeners will probably remember our last show was September 4th, our last show at Co-op Radio. Then we had a small break as we got reorganized, and as I just said, October 24th, we launched the new web format. So what have you learned from 3 months so far?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that really we on the September 4th we celebrated 25 years on the air, and that the solid support we had from our listeners was really clear to us through their support after that, when we called for donations, and we got really a good response. And to be frank, we haven't even used half of this donation. We didn't spend it on the equipment. We spent half of it at least on equipment, but still we have lots of money still to help us really improve the show. And we thank all those people who supported us financially, and also, more importantly, they supported our position vis-a-vis Co-op Radio.
If I can just interject, I also wanted to point out and thank all the people who have helped us technically, because of course this was a shift technically for us as well. There were new pieces of equipment we had to learn, new things we had to kind of get a better handle on. So we had quite a few people who helped us technically, and we should give a special thanks to our web team of Sean and Dalal, who've done a really big effort too in not only helping us get established in the new format, but also they've added some new features which we'll talk about later too.
Also, I think Jace Tanner helped us.
Yes, Jace Tanner helped us as well too. We were really quite overwhelmed with the support we got, and was crucial because we're
and we not shy to admit
we're technologically not backward, but we need help. So it was good that so many people were willing to to give us that assistance.
Yeah,
So.
And in general, I think you asked about the last 3 months. I'd say it went smoothly, really. You know, we didn't have any big problems. We didn't have to redo the show all over again or anything like that. The only thing is one show we had to put it in 2 sections, which wasn't bad, really, to break the show in 2 sections. And maybe we should do that more often, although it happened because of technical difficulty, really. But you know, we felt that it was appropriate, and because we ran out of battery actually, which we weren't expecting.
Yes, on one of our new recorders.
So we had to do it in 2 sections. But in general, I'd say it was smooth, and judging from the views, I think it's very important. I'd like to talk a bit about that because, you know, you could tell how many visitors visited the website, although this is not posted on the website. But I'd like to say when we were on Co-op Radio before September, we had average of 3,000 visitors per month. 3,000 visitors, which wasn't bad and isn't bad at all for any radio show. When we started the show in October and on, we had really increased the guests on our website at least by 1,000 every month, which was overwhelming for us, and we feel it is an improvement of what we had before. And I think our principal position led people to trust us, and they feel that we are contributing to the struggle and to informing the public of what's happening in Palestine.
And also, this is a good place to bring in the other topic of the new features that we're trying to add. Just different things that, as a collective, we're experimenting with, and just to see what's more valuable, what's not. People who get our notices on a regular basis have probably picked up on the fact that we've now started a YouTube channel, and the shows are, as well as our regular podcast, which I think is overwhelmingly still the main format that people are going to, but we've also introduced the YouTube channel, and all the shows are being carried on the YouTube channel, and we're introducing that now, hoping that it's something that will develop for the future, and that we may hopefully eventually will be reaching even a different sort of audience than what we're reaching now with the podcast. So we have that as well, and we also have introduced on the website since the December 18th show, I believe, the number of views for each individual show that people can see when they go to check things on the website. So those are some new features people can check out on the website. People may have also noticed that we now do the download with a very brief little introduction, but we no longer have been doing the full show summaries that we used to do on a regular basis for each show. Previously, we had the show summary and a download for each week's show, and since we started the new format, we've only been doing the download with a briefer summary. Now, that's partly because up until this point, we've been focusing on the expanded interview sort of format. We wanted to try to fine-tune that, become a bit more established at that. But we're now going to be branching out a bit more into shows that include more than just that expanded interview format. So there may be some weeks where we may still use the show summary format, but up until this point, for our new web show, we haven't been using it. We have dropped that. Some listeners had mentioned that to us. And the other thing we wanted to say as well is that we do welcome feedback from all of our supporters and listeners, which we do get already on a regular basis. People email or Facebook us and mention that they like this show in particular, or that show in particular, or or they had some connection with something or a guest that was on a particular show, and they've sent it to their friends and what have you. We also have people that send us programming suggestions. There's someone who they think would be a good guest or what have you, and we really encourage that, and we encourage all our listeners and supporters, if they have something they'd like to suggest programming-wise, they can either send it on the Voice of Palestine Facebook, or they can email us at hkawas@msn.com. That's HKAWAS, hkawas@msn.com. So that's a good way to give us any feedback that you have.
Yeah, and the email is also on our website,
yes,
voiceofpalestine.ca, so
yes.
For people who didn't have chance to write it down, they could go to the Voice of Palestine, and like Marion said, we welcome all suggestions, and we really urge people to give us some guidance, because we planning, to go on for a while at least. So
maybe not another 25 years, no, but sometime. Yeah. All of which, and the thing about the contact information being on the website, unlike when we were on Co-op Radio, now we know at least everyone that's listening to us has to be accessing the website. Yeah. So we know you can find the contact information there. So, and we do know that quite a few of listeners who used to listen to us on the radio have made the transition to listening to us on the internet, because we've had quite a few people contact us, and they have told us that they are. They were able to make that transition.
No doubt we lost some listeners, but I think we gained much more. I mean, as I said before, the average of guests on the website
visitors to
increase to at least 1,000 every month.
Yeah, increased by 1,000
more than what we used to have before.
So that's all encouraging, which kind of brings me to another point we wanted to talk about. Was we never really spoke on any personal note about why we were leaving Co-op Radio and how we left Co-op Radio. It's true we did issue position papers, and then we did issue an official statement when we left, but we never really spoke as the two co-hosts about sort of our personal feelings of the whole experience and leaving Co-op. It was a very difficult and agonizing decision in many ways, because of course we'd been there doing the show for so long, for 25 years, as Hannah already said. So I mean, it was a big change to make, and it was a very difficult change to make, although we felt that politically, for the reasons that we've expressed on the website, anybody can access them at voiceofpalestine.ca, but because of the what we felt were the undemocratic way that the station made the frequency swap with the Jim Pattison station, and then also the refusal to accept the BDS principles were both. We felt politically it was untenable for us to stay there, but it was very difficult to make that decision to leave, because it was a huge change in something that we had felt, had been a very important part of our work for a very long time.
Yeah, and on personal level, you mentioned that, Marion. I think I was really disappointed with many people who work at Co-op Radio, because they didn't rise up to the occasion and denounce the undemocratic practices there. Actually, the board and the staff were trying to suppress our position papers. We asked them to send it around to programmers and to members, and they refused. So they really tried, and again, in undemocratic way, to suppress our voice and why we're leaving. And when we went off the air, issued a statement, maybe Marion could talk about it, which was really insufficient for why we left. They issued a statement saying that they are proud of the show, etc., but without really saying why did we leave, or without letting the membership know why did we leave. And again, this is undemocratic, and their words, although they claim they are proud of us, reeks of hypocrisy, really.
It was disappointing. That's true. Their statement when we left was disappointing because, yeah, although it was nice that they said they were proud of the show and that they had supported it and that they were proud that they had supported it. I think I've kind of gotten the gist of it there. It was, as you put, insufficient. It was lacking in that it didn't offer any explanation for why we were leaving, except for the fact that it had been 25 years and more or less implying, the time had come for us to go after 25 years, and that was pretty much about it. They didn't touch the political differences at all, which, I mean, maybe that's, I suppose, from their point of view was maybe understandable, but I felt it was disingenuous in the sense that if you were going to make a statement and if you were going to say that you had been proud of the show, I mean, it was incumbent upon them to at least make some comment on the political differences that had arisen, which were basically the whole reason that we had left. I mean, it's otherwise we would still be there. And I'm sure it didn't escape their notice that our final radio show, the show just before when we went off the air, was like 5 days before the station switched to the new frequency, the frequency that they swapped with the Jim Pattison group. So, I mean, it was our 25th anniversary, true, but it was like a
and maybe
coincidence in a sense, but it was also like perfect timing that it was just before they switched to the new frequency.
I don't think it's really coincidence, because we timed it that way, considering that Voice of Palestine was going to air on a transmission owned by Jim Pattison, and we didn't have the heart or the emotions to do that, and feel good about ourselves, because on the one hand, Jim Pattison group is boycotted, and it's on the BDS list. The Canada-Palestine Association issued a statement to boycott Jim Pattison group, and on the other, here is Co-op Radio, who claims to be progressive. They are transmitting and made a deal with $500,000 with Jim Pattison group. They sold the station frequency, and they sold their principles for the money, basically. And again, they are crossing our picket lines, because they are really transmitting on official transmitter owned by Jim Pattison, aside from the billboards that they are using, which also, again, we consider it a picket line crossing by advertising on Jim Pattison boards. So for all these reasons, really, we were disappointed by them. And what I was disappointed is even with the progressive people who claim to support Palestine and support the BDS movement, and still these things, this muffling of our points of view from the staff and the board, and muffling the truth about what's happened. They in essence, they really, and they, again, crossing our picket lines. To them, they feel that it's not really a big issue. It's a point of view. Like as we say back home, even treason became a point of view, not punishable by death. No, it's a point of view. So I'm really disappointed with many, who still work at Co-op Radio and who still proclaim that they support the BDS movement and support Palestine. It is hypocrisy. I mean, if you want to support it, you take a concrete position.
As I'm sure people could see, I mean, it was a sort of it was, as I said before, it was a position we felt was just untenable for us to continue carrying on with. It was just rife with all these contradictions. I don't want to go on at too much more lengths with them. Most of it's detailed on our website. As I said, voiceofpalestine.ca. People can read the position papers. I mean, they're all there, very clearly documented. It's all spelt out. So, but it just, as I said, the position became untenable, and so that's why, in good conscience, we didn't. Some people did tell us, the importance of keeping the show going is more important than anything else, and that's an issue we struggled with as well. But as we said, in good conscience, we didn't feel we could carry on further. But
we feel that we would compromise our principles, really, basically, and we weren't willing to do that.
Yes, so that was just sort of some of our personal thoughts around it, which up to this point we haven't really expressed either on the show we did on Co-op Radio or on this show either yet. It's something we wanted to, I guess, put a little bit of distance and then be able to speak about it. To speak about
when we are a bit more calm.
Yes, but maybe we should have waited a little bit longer. On second thought, we should have waited a little bit longer, maybe. At any rate, we want to wrap it up soon, but as I said, we've been on now for almost 3 months in the new format. So do you have some final thoughts, Hannah, on...
Yeah, I think it's important for, especially I direct my request to those who are still members at Co-op Radio, and because the board and the staff tried to hide our position paper and not give, actually even our last statement were pulled out of the boxes from Co-op Radio. Why did we leave? So I'm sure they could learn a lot about what happened by going to our website and about our final statement, because they were denied by the board and the staff to know the truth about why did we leave.
Right, and do you have some final thoughts on the new format and where we're going to go from here?
Yeah, I think it's important really to continue. We try to do a show every week, and we hope to continue that. We hope, as I asked our listener previously, to have more feedback by them. I'm sure we have lots of people who are going into the website on daily basis. The average even surprise us, because there is lots of guests who go to our website. So we would like from them to give us some feedback and to try to publicize our show and to their friends, and to join our Facebook page as a show of solidarity. And we encourage all our listeners to do that and to try to ask their friends to support our show by at least joining our Facebook and by
and there's
making
a link to that on the website. The voiceofpalestine.ca. There's a link to the Facebook. There's now a link to the YouTube channel. There's a link to if you want to sign up for the, I believe it's called the RSS feed or RRS feed. Again, we're not the technical wizards here, but that's the one where it tells you whenever there's a new podcast that from the show to listen to. So just to emphasize what Hannah's saying, it's that Voice of Palestine is here, we're continuing, and we're planning to be around for a long time still. And
the final thing is, we really, without your encouragement and support, we won't have made it, first of all, 25, and we won't have continued. So we thank all our listeners and supporters.
Definitely. And with that, we conclude another edition of The Voice of Palestine. I've been your co-host, Marian Kawas, and for both Hannah and myself, have a good night.